Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh from MitsuTimes. Today, my guest is the one and only Miguel Martinez, a.k.a. Miguel DSM. How are you doing today, sir?
Pretty good, man. Out here in Cali. How are you doing?
I'm great. I wish we had the same weather, but, I guess I'll sacrifice being over here. You know, you guys have a lot to do. It's crazy how the West Coast scene and the East Coast scene for Mitsubishis is so different. Like, you see so much street racing, you see so much, no prep stuff, and then over here it's kind of like, we have the shootout, we have, like, FL2K, stuff like that. It's insane that everyone has fast cars, but they're built just a little bit different for different types of situations.
Correct. Yeah, and I really saw that at the shootout this year. It was my first time going, and the types of Mitsubishis that I saw out there are definitely different to what we have out here. So
yeah,
it was a bit of a shock all in all, but very cool to see. Honestly, there's a lot of good people and some pretty nice cars out there.
Yeah, I saw. I love your clothing brand. Shout out to Race Legacy.
Yeah, I made that in 2018 when I first started my YouTube channel. I had like this dream to, like the whole YouTuber thing, right?
Yeah.
It was very popular back then, and of course, I had like my favorite YouTubers, and I saw how they worked on their cars, and I really wanted to kind of document my Eclipse build. I had already built it to a certain extent, but I definitely wanted to start documenting just DSMs as a platform for the YouTube, just because there wasn't really many people doing it at the time.
For sure. I mean, still just a handful, really.
Even today, yeah, sadly.
But when I saw your the one shirt that stood out to me was the anti-Mitsubishi Club, and I thought, man, if I could just get Miguel over here and he could see how we interact with each other, I think that it'll change his mind on the Mitsubishi community.
I think Mitsubishi overall is like a love-hate type of thing for me.
For sure.
I love the cars. I love what it stands for. I love the motorsport division, especially back in like the rally days and what Mitsubishi stood for back then. But then there's also like the negative aspect, right? So I got to experience a lot of, like, for example, like there's a little bit of bicker here and there between, the community with, the turbo guys versus the 428 guys,
right.
Or there's always that going on. So I kind of grew up with that when I got into DSMs, because my DSM, my 2G, was a 420A, and it was just I got to live through the forums. I got to live through the beginning of YouTube and Facebook groups, and then I also got to experience like the local scene here. As a new kid, right, not knowing how to work on a car. It was my first car ever, the Eclipse was, and I was just like basically just learning my ways around the car scene and how everything kind of works.
Yeah. My first car was a 428, and that was so crazy to me. I wouldn't say all. A lot of the drag racers I talked to, especially 2G guys, all started out with 428. So then I'm like, where does this hate come from? Is it the 1G guys? I don't understand. But anyways.
Either, man. It's just like you just can't compare the 428 to a 4G63.
Right.
Like, at the end of the day, the reputation that the 4G has for itself is just worldwide. It's recognized as one of the best four cylinders, if not the best. I mean, it's always the competition against the K. But the 4G63 just has its spot, and the 428 never really got any even like love, like aftermarket wise, right? Like ECUs and just anything just to modify 420 to make it faster wasn't really available for us 428 guys, and I could kind of see why. And it's just because the 420 platform overall, you're limited to the front wheel drive. You're limited to even after going forged, you can only make so much, just because you don't have the accessibility of the aftermarket support that the 4G63 does. So that's kind of how I see it.
I only saw one 420A turbo car at the shootout. Hopefully you got a chance to talk to him, but man, as soon as I walked past, I had to do a double take, and I thought, man, hey, thanks for bringing this out. I just love to see somebody out here still doing it.
Right. It's always nice to see them. I've always been a big fan of the 420. I know they're limited, but I've always just because my 2G was a 420 at one point, I love the 428, guys, just because it's like, I was once in their position as well. So
Right.
it's cool engine, and you do see some cool 428s, and if you just want like a little street 2G that looks good driving down the street and has that turbo spool, then it's perfect.
Right. I mean, hell, even if you're looking for something to drive back and forth to work, I mean, the 428 is going to live up to that.
Oh yeah, I've had a lot of them, and I would daily drive most of them, and barely any issues.
So, Miguel, I'm so curious, what is it that got you into Mitsubishis in the first place?
For me, is my dad used to have a 2GA Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX.
Oh, wow.
Back in the 2000s. It was silver as well. And around that time, I was also playing Need for Speed Underground, Need for Speed Underground 2, Need for Speed Most Wanted on my GameCube. So I kind of grew up around that era where I was like, Fast and the Furious had just come out. So I was a kid with video games that would basically pick Mitsubishi as like my favorite type of brand, and I always knew that once I had my first car, that it had to be like an Eclipse. So I even went over it with my dad, and he was supposed to, pass me down the Eclipse, but at some point he sold it off because we needed a 4-door to get around as a family. So he sold it. I was really bummed out. I remember crying, and after that it was just more to myself. I was like, I want one as my first car, and fast forward later, I'm 18, working at a 99-cent store as a cashier, and I get my first 2G, and I still have it today, so it's been with me since the get-go.
I love that. I love that you've kept it all this time. What's the setup on it now, Miguel? I know you've kind of gone through a couple different stages of it. What's the setup on it now?
Currently, it's more of just like a street build. So engine-wise, it's just swapped with the Evo 8 4G63 stock block. Full bolt-ons, E85, speed density, standalone ECU with AEM. I got it tuned out here in SoCal with Road Race, and it made 440 to the wheels and then 413 torque on the stock Evo 9 Turbo with E85. So that, to me, honestly, for the street, it's a very quick car. Like it accelerates really quickly. There's no boost lag, and it's just like the power is very linear. It's very predictable, but it's still quick enough to pretty much beat a lot of cars in the street. So
right.
Handling wise, it's just rear sway bar, front and rear strut bar. We have the coilover suspension, and that's pretty much it. That's all. That's pretty much done to it. And then, of course, aesthetic wise, it's just the TE37s, the lip kits, the carbon fiber pieces here and there. I've always been more of like the aesthetic, the DSMer that went more for aesthetics over performance.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it wasn't until I swapped it with my buddies that I started getting more into the performance side of things, and I saw the benefits, and I saw how cool a car can be once you go from 140 horsepower to 400 plus. A big jump. So after I swapped that car, it's just like the way I saw it was, I loved it even more. It was just, I was just that much more attached to it because I just saw it form.
I want to clear up. Sometimes when people say they're into the aesthetic, they think of what we used to call riced out stickers. And this, you make every car that you touch super, super, super clean, and I think that says a lot about you and your taste in cars.
So the way I like to call it is more of like an OEM plus. So usually when I modify cars, I tend to leave them, I try not to change too much. I just add a lip kit, coilover suspension, some nice wheels, and the car looks pleasing. Like it just looks simple, but it looks modified at the same time. It's just like little touches here and there. But yeah, like I don't like to overdo it. I also think that, when it comes to modifying cars aesthetically, it's all subjective. So, I also like Eclipses with the body kits and that look like they're from the Fast and the Furious era because I grew up with that too, right? So at some point I wanted to do that back when I was a kid, but by the time I got into cars, the car scene was way different and the way we would modify cars was already, way different. So part of me still wants to, build an Eclipse just like that as well. But, some people kind of kept it period correct per se, or, back from those days, and that's okay too. It's just, I feel like the reputation with DSMs when it comes to just, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like some people never really took care of them. And I mean, obviously it's going to vary per person, but a lot of DSMs just have the bad reputation for being beat and,
for sure,
reliable and stuff like that. And it's just, I think they were just so cheap at some point that anyone grab one and then, swap parts over with another car. And it just kind of went through it. So I feel like it's really hard to find clean ones now. And,
especially ones, like you said, that have been well maintained. There's
right.
so many out there with whole set HX40s or this turbo, that turbo, but then have never had the timing belt changed its whole life.
Yeah. And I also understand, being the high school kid with no money, like it's expensive to do a timing belt service, right? Especially if you don't know how to do it and you have to take it to a shop. Like I also understand that perspective because, I think it was like mostly like a lot of the DSMers nowadays, it was the high school kids, right? Like me that kind of got the car, not knowing what to do, not really having too much money to spend on the maintenance. And, we're paying for the consequences now, but the faster you can realize that maintenance is key and the faster you can do it to your car, I think you're going to start seeing more of like the long-term effects, reliability wise with the car, especially over the years, especially if you're going to keep it for a very long time, you might as well just do it,
For sure. Yeah. You're going to save a lot of money in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to learn, like that's kind of how I did it with my Eclipse. I hung out with other DSMers or people that knew more than me so that they could teach me how to do it, or they helped me with my car, right? So that's kind of how I've learned, what I know today.
Yeah.
Is from other people or mechanics or shops or, just always being willing to learn or how to become better or a trick here and there that could, save you hours on a job or something.
So for those of you out there listening who don't know Miguel's car, it was originally a 420A, and now Evo 4G63 lives where the 420A once did. So, Miguel, what is it that motivated you to put the 4G63 in it?
It was back in I want to say 2014, 15 when I was already hanging out with all the DSMers out here in SoCal, and they were primarily GSX guys, and I was one of the very few 420A guys. But they would and I was also the youngest, so they would kind of just, kind of bully me into getting a GST or GS. Many times we had, the group chat, and I was the one always getting roasted because I had the slow car, and then eventually I put Brembos on my 420A, and it got even worse. And I think I saw this story of someone Evo swapping a 2G on DSM tuners. I saw a picture and it looked real, and I was like, okay, so it's possible. It's been done before. This would be so sick. If I could do it. And I honestly, I had no business doing the swap. I don't know how I pulled it off right now. Look, it was just that internal desire to prove the guys wrong and make my car faster than theirs somehow. And, because I wanted to keep my 2G. I was very close to selling it and getting the GSX, but I'm kind of glad I didn't, because now the car stands, for much more than just that. It's just the sentimental attachment to the car is that much bigger. And obviously you shouldn't care for material things, but it's, as a car guy, we all get that. Every car has a different story, and that's kind of how the story with that one. So yeah, it was mainly to prove that the 2G guys wrong. And luckily I had, other friends too that, there were 428 guys as well, and they're the ones that kind of helped me start the Evo swap in the garage. So it was thanks to them. Honestly, I don't think I would have been able to do it without them. It was Lazy, Carlos, Josh. It was just some local DSM guys here, basically.
That's awesome. And after that, it was everybody with a 420 was I'm putting a 4G63 in just like Miguel did. I was like, I don't think you're taking into account how much Miguel probably spent.
Man, it was just, I had this burning just desire to get it done. I was just that was my main life goal at the moment. I was 21 at the time, 22, I want to say. And I was just putting all my, most of my paychecks towards the swap. And I don't know, I think I did it. It was just because I was doing it in a step-by-step manner, and I was documenting everything. So then I also had people, that were giving me advice, or telling me, oh, do this, get this part here. Yeah. I got a lot of help. That's kind of how it all happened. So it took 2 years to get it completely done. Initially front-wheel drive with a 3G trans, and then went all-wheel drive with the Evo transmission, custom drive shaft, and then GSX ran to make it, fully all-wheel drive.
That's awesome. I mean, I get why you did it now that you've explained it, because I remember back when I had a 420A and then I put the Han turbo kit on it, and then people were like, just sell it and buy a GST or a GSX. I'm like, but I already like this car.
Yeah, man, it was bad back then. It was really bad.
Makes sense now. So we know why you got the 2G now, but what is it? What was the 2G like when you bought it? Was it pretty much stock?
So it was. I bought it from the first owner. I saw it online, and then I went to go look at it out here in Redlands, California. It was missing the passenger door side skirt. The taillight had a crack in it. It had 128,000 miles on it. And then I think at the time he wanted 2,800 for it, which was a lot for a 428. But it was single owner, no accidents. I mean, obviously missing the side skirt, but it was very clean. Like, it was very well taken care of. And I needed something reliable to daily drive, so I kind of took the gamble on it. And I'm kind of glad I did because, a couple of 2Gs I bought after that, they were usually beat, like just paint-wise, body panels, just like it's been touched, and it just didn't feel the same as the silver one. The silver one has always felt intact, like it hasn't really been touched. So I've always liked that about that. So I got very lucky with it at the same time.
I mean, certainly, I've never seen it in person, but it certainly looks absolutely perfect in pictures and videos. So it's definitely...
It's very photogenic and videogenic for some reason, but when you see it in person, there's obviously imperfections. The car's still on original paint. I have to switch out the front bumper. Like, if you look at the car, like, it's honestly like a 7.5 out of 10. Like, it's not perfect. It looks very good on pictures, but when you see it in person, like, yeah, it looks clean, but there's obvious things that I could fix to make it look mint.
Yeah.
And that's the end goal with it. Obviously, it's just to paint it, fix all the imperfections, but it's more based around time, money, and space, and just at the moment, it's not the right time to even touch it. So,
like you said, like a factory plus kind of finished product.
Right. So I feel like I have the foundation. I just need to execute the rest of the work to get it to that point.
Yeah. So, did you have any original goals with this car? Or was it just going to be to drive it back and forth to work?
At the time, it was just supposed to be like my dream project car that I wanted to build. I had no idea how to modify a car, how to work on a car, how to modify it, what was accessible. So it was kind of, my goal was just to kind of use it as a guinea pig to find out what I like. And, I went through a bunch of different wheel setups. I did an intake. It was the car that I basically just, trial and tested everything. I did interior, I did engine bay, I did exterior. And that's kind of how I don't know, there really wasn't any goal with it. It's just to modify it. And I think as a build, it never really stops. So I feel like the car still has a long way. It's technically done, but it still has a long ways to go as far as where I want it to be. So I think the goal for it is just to modify it to the best of my ability over time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that plan.
I think that goes for any car. Yeah.
Yeah. Just try to make it the best you can without ruining the reliability.
Right. And I mean, it's going to be different for everyone because obviously I fis like most of the guys listening to this are drag guys, for example. So, that's not really my style. I'm more of like a street type of DSMer per se.
Yeah, for sure.
But I could see how people have like goals as far as like building a 8-second drag car or making it to the DSM shootout or just building, like time attack DSM, or I saw that too at the shootout, or just like a street car. It's just everyone's going to have different goals. And like that car never, I've only taken it to the track once. And besides that, it's always been street.
Yeah. But I mean, that goes back to the beginning, what we were saying, like the scene's a little bit different out there where, that's just kind of how the culture is out there.
Definitely. It's, I feel like the East Coast guys are a little more inclined towards racing versus us over here. Yeah. We're more of like a street car show, I don't know. It's definitely different for sure.
So the 2G is not your only 4G63 powered car. You also have a very beautiful Evo. I mean, it looks like it's absolutely perfect. Why don't you tell us a little about that one?
Okay, so the Evo, I was basically daily driving a motorcycle at the time, and then I got into an accident, and I had to basically, get a car. So I've always loved Mitsubishis, and I was like, what's the next step to an Eclipse? And it was just like, oh, it's an Evo. So I went to go test drive one at the dealership, and it was like the first time I felt boost in a fast car. And I was just immediately sold. So I took it out on payments at the time, and I kind of used it just to daily drive to college, and eventually modify. But at the time, it was just the parts were really expensive, and I could only afford so much, and I was already going to start the Evo swap on the Eclipse. So, I couldn't afford just to modify it. So I kind of left it on its own for a while. It was just my daily driver. And that was the one car that I've always just kind of modified on the side whenever I could.
Yeah.
And of course I had, I was documenting the build on YouTube, and it's gotten to the point now where I took it to Irwindale Speedway, which is a 1/8 of a mile drag strip out here in SoCal. And I ended up launching it, and it was the first time where I was in a track, where they pretty much prepped the track. So as soon as I took off, I pretty much blew first gear on my trans, and I had to basically, And then at that point, my clutch at the time, my twin disc was also failing. So I was just like, it's time to pull the trans, but I might as well just, take the engine out, paint the engine bay, and, put everything back with like a bigger turbo and, do like a nice build, right? So that was the original goal. And so I pulled the engine, took it into the engine bay, took the car to get it painted out here in Long Beach, and it just got done. So I'm supposed to pick it up, and then we could start doing the build process on that one as well. So I'm pretty excited. Yeah. So I'm finally giving it some love as well. It's one of the cars that's always been like on the sideline, just because the 2G has always kind of been my main car
in the spotlight.
Yeah, exactly. It's always been under shadow, which is kind of crazy because the Evo overall is always the bigger brother to the Eclipse.
Right. And it's crazy to me that you're kind of just starting this build, because it already, I mean, I've never seen it in person again, but every picture you post, I'm just like, man, those wheels are perfect. The fitment's perfect. Wow. The carbon fiber is just perfect on it. And I'm like, man, he's just starting this? Holy cow.
Thank you, man. I don't know. It might have been just luck, or just, I don't know. It's just, I've been modifying cars since the Need for Speed days on video games. So I've always liked that, the modifying aspect to a car, just to change it up. And everyone has a different build. Everyone's unique. So that's always been cool.
And I know it's just like little subtle changes, but I like that you picked the 9, because I think it just looks so much more aesthetically pleasing than the 8.
Yeah, same here. It's just slightly cleaner. It's a 1-year production only. So, and then they skyrocketed in value after the whole pandemic. So it was one of those lucky cars to have, I guess, at the time.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Sport Compact Warehouse. Sport Compact Warehouse is your premier source for performance car parts and accessories, with everything from lug nuts to turbochargers to clutch assemblies to front mount intercoolers. They have whatever you need to get your Mitsubishi up high on our list. They have been operating since 2001 and offer over 1 million parts for nearly every Mitsubishi model available. They have 24/7 live inventory and free ground shipping on orders over $150. Find their huge selection of parts at sportcompactwarehouse.com. So this one was also just pretty much bone stock when you got it?
Yeah, I think it had an intake, it had coilovers, it had some wheels, it had no wing, and then it had like a diffuser.
Oh, wow.
And then I kind of switched everything over. I went E85 on it, made 430, I think. And then, super fun car. Honestly, that's the one car that it's probably the one that just handles and drives the best out of all of them.
So your plans for this are pretty much very similar to the 2G, kind of like a factory plus kind of situation.
Yeah, aesthetics-wise, yes. And then performance-wise, forward-facing, precision 58, 58. Yeah, I mean, twin disc. I have the built trans, carbon synchros, Evo ultimate gear ratio. It's currently out in TJ getting fixed, though. I took it out there because I'm going out there with Sergio from Carbonetics. So, yeah, we're working some stuff out there.
Dude, that's awesome. I look forward to seeing more about that. A car of yours that I love probably even more than the 2G, I hate to say, is your 3000 GT. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that car?
The way I got that car was super random because I've always loved them. I've always loved how they look, especially the 99. I was just, I don't know. It was just one day my buddy called me and he's like, hey, my dealership friend is trying to sell me this VR4. I figured I'd ask you first if you wanted dips. He's selling it for really cheap. He can't get it running. And I told him to send me pictures, and it was a 98 black 3000 GT VR4. It wasn't running. He wanted $1,000 for it, super cheap.
What?
But he couldn't get it running, yeah. So I was like, you know what? Let me go look at it. if I could fix it, I could always flip this, right? And I went to go look at it. I talked to the guy. It was sitting since 2012, so it was like a good 8 years, I would say. And then I just bought it on the spot and then took it home, and it kind of turned into like a restoration project for YouTube, and it ended up just turning into what it is now. So I pretty much just did, coilover suspension, wheels, lip kits, did the full wrap on it so it's red. Put the 99 front bumper, 99, front headlights, 99 combat wing, exhaust system, blow-off valve.
I mean, it's the absolute poster child for what a 3000 GT should look like.
Exactly, man. It's just it's like a Japanese Ferrari, if that makes sense.
You've absolutely killed it. I thought that red was factory, but now that I know it's a wrap, I'm like, man, he really went in the right direction with that car.
Yeah. Color is just, I've always wanted a red 3000 GT, and hopefully one day I could actually paint it the full color. It's just wrap's a good alternative for the people out there that don't want to pay that much more for a paint job or aren't fully dedicated to a color.
Or you take the risk of a paint job not coming out the way you want it to.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So, but definitely get good quality wrap. So I think I got Avery Dennison on the 3000 GT, and then I got like a cheap knockoff brand for the RSX, and you can just tell the difference is just immense. Like if you're gonna wrap it, do it with like a good quality wrap, because it makes a difference.
Man, that's so cool. The 3000 GT is a car that obviously I absolutely love, but I don't know if I would take the risk of owning one just because they always seem like a headache.
Yeah, some people say it's like that one car that you hope your friend has. Yeah, and I could see why, and I've been very lucky too. I have a buddy out here. He was a DSMer as well. He has a shop, and he specializes in GTRs and cars like this. So whenever I had any sort of issue, I would kind of go to him, and he would kind of guide me in the right direction. So I've been very, he would let me use his lifts. He's like, do this, and I would just record everything for YouTube. And if you go back and see the videos, it's just half the time I'm in the shop because the car needs a lot of work. We did the timing belt, water pump, motor mounts, injectors, fuel pump, fuel lines, a lot of stuff to that car just to get it running, properly. So yeah, it's not fast. It's a car that I would describe more as like a boat when you're driving it. It's very comfortable on the freeway. Honestly, it's I think the freeway is where it really reigns supreme. It's just the most comfortable car I've ever been in that drives like that. It's weird.
Just comes alive out on the open road.
It really does, and it's just it just feels like it's planted and it looks amazing. It's weird, and it sounds crazy,
I can't imagine. I mean, people say that they don't weigh that much more than a 2G, but they certainly look like they weigh a lot more.
Oh, you definitely feel it. The interiors feel very similar, but it's just like when you're driving both, it's just a night and day difference. The 2G feels like a go-kart compared to a 3000.
Yeah. Just because it feels like the 2G, you're kind of tucked in there behind the wheel.
Yeah, everything feels compressed.
So what are the plans for this one? I mean, surely you got to be pretty close to done. I mean, it looks absolutely perfect already.
Thank you, man. I feel like it's just like I said, the foundations for both the 2G and the 3000s are there. I just really need the time and money to really, be able to spend, a couple thousands on a proper paint job and, go over all my mistakes that I did, as a beginner and build the car right, if that makes sense. That's something that I've learned over time is I feel like the older you get, the more you have to start paying to it's just the attention to detail to your build is very important. And I feel like when I was younger, I would skip over a lot of the stuff because I was too lazy to do it. So a proper paint job or, just doing a job right? So how you do anything is how you do everything. I think that's very important for a build as well. Yeah.
You going to try to squeeze some more power out of this one too?
Definitely. So, I mean, if the time and money came to play, it would be pulling the engine out. I would not mind doing a 4G63 swap. It's actually very common.
Yeah.
It would just give you all the space in the world. It would, weight reduction and the aftermarket support would just be insane. And I would feel like I would be more in my element just with a 4G63,
A guy right down the road from me actually makes the motor mounts for the swap.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well, just in case, I always said if I end up blowing the 6G72, then that's the route I would definitely go. The purists would definitely hate it because the 98 is actually the rarest year.
Oh,
So
really?
so for resale purposes, you wanted to stock and, as untouched as possible, but I feel like I'm already, past that point. And I really don't want to sell it. It's one of those cars that I know it's gonna, it's gonna become very rare at some point.
Yeah.
Very, very rare.
And you're already so attached to it. It's like selling one of your kids.
And I hate it, man, because it's just like I have, it's just the 3 Mitsubishis, yeah, but it's like, besides the fact that I get to have them, like what's the purpose behind it, right? You don't really need, all these cars, but as a car guy, it's just like you always want another one.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm always on the lookout for another one.
Yeah, and I hate it, man. Realistically, I should only have the Eclipse. But now look at me with the 3 Mitsubishis, so it's cool. I'm very grateful for that, honestly. It's just the opportunity just to have them and build them. It's just a pleasure.
So do you daily drive one of these every day?
No, actually, I daily drive a Honda.
Is it that blue Acura you had?
Yeah, the RS6 type. That's actually a really fun car. But I could see how like my Mitsubishi guys won't like them. But yeah, I daily drove the Evo for 2 years, and I daily drove the 3000 for 1 year.
Ooh,
and
that's a bold move.
Yeah, and then after that, the Eclipse, I daily drove it back in the 428A, so like 4 years.
Yeah.
And now I have this little Honda just to drive around on the side and kind of have fun with it, and just experience something different as far as like brand wise. It's my first K series, so it's different.
So do you have any goals with any of your Mitsubishi cars besides just finishing the builds to your standards? Is there any races that you want to hit or shows that you want to hit or anything like that?
As far as like events, I would definitely say the DSM shootout. Like it would definitely, I feel like as a DSMer or a Mitsubishi owner, I think you should make it a goal to go to the DSM shootout. Just me myself getting to experience just the event. It's definitely an event I want to take my Eclipse to.
Awesome. We'd love to have you.
One of those checkbox type of goals that I would love. And that goes for any of the cars, honestly. As far as right now, the Evo, I just want to finish it. It's been down for so long that I really want to drive it. And I kind of want to start getting more into like the time attack motorsport. So I took the Evo to Streets of Willow, and it was honestly such a fun and encouraging car. It's almost like a cheater car at the track. It's a very good track car, and that goes for drag, that goes for time attack, that goes for autocross. It's a very well balanced chassis that you could definitely take advantage of. So.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, the Evo is one car you see excel in all motorsport platforms.
Definitely. It's proven, and it's just, everyone knows it. So
besides these 3, Miguel, have you had any other Mitsubishis that you want to talk about?
I've owned a Talon at some point, but besides that, all I've owned is just 2Gs. Future-wise, I could definitely see myself in a Stereon with a 4G63 swap. I've always loved. I had a buddy that had a blue TSI, and he gave me a ride in it, and it was just a completely different experience. So you don't see those at all. So it would be kind of cool to kind of keep the Mitsubishi kind of theme going, the collection. I could definitely see myself, like, especially as like a 55-year-old or something, to have like the full Mitsubishi collection. I'm talking Pajero, I'm talking Stereon, I'm talking a 1G, I'm talking the FTO. So I just feel like Mitsubishi, especially for those times, they had like a lot of good cars that they're still very underrated, compared to a lot of the Nissans and Hondas of today. So
for sure, I'm actually surprised you don't have an FTO already.
Yeah, it's mainly money, man.
Seems like there'd be a lot where you are.
Yeah, trust me. It's just once I have the opportunity to own these, and hopefully I can. I definitely will.
Awesome.
FTOs, Pajero are definitely on the list.
Good deal. So we've talked about it. We've hinted at it a little bit throughout this podcast, but how is the Mitsubishi community in Southern California? Because we see bits and pieces, but we don't get the full details.
Sadly, I'm not as involved as I used to be back when I barely got into it, but it's always been active. It's always been pretty good for what it is. And usually the people within the community are very helpful, and they tend to, help each other out. So the 3000 GT guys, they all hang out all the time. They're always going to car meets, and they help each other with their cars because, they're pretty hard to, repair. So that's kind of cool. The Evo guys, we have the SoCal Evo group. So they're always hosting meets. They're always, doing something. So they're very, very active. And sadly, the Mitsubishi Eclipse guys, they're not as active anymore. There used to be a couple of groups out here like Inland DSM or LA DSM that would host meets. But besides that, they're everyone's kind of scattered. So I think the community is definitely very active. It's just it's not as big as a lot of the brands of SoCal. So
okay, it definitely seems like the videos I just see on Instagram or on TikTok, it's just like, here's some guys out in the parking lot, and then they end up going out to quote unquote Mexico and doing some light to light stuff. And it seems like they're killing everything in that area.
Definitely. So we have a little bit of everything, honestly, and you just have to look for the right group of people. But once you start getting involved and you start meeting people, you kind of find your own your own segment, and you do your own thing. So there's definitely roll racing. There's definitely just work on the garage with your friends that on a Sunday. And then there's the guys that are always going to car meets or, going to car shows or going to the drag strip or, doing something. So it's definitely, it's big enough to where you can find different types.
Awesome. So Miguel, I have to know because, you seem like such a busy guy, but you still make time for these things with your cars, and then you still go to the Mitsubishi Owners Day. What does the Mitsubishi community mean to you that you still love to go out and do these things?
Honestly, it started off as what was to me my favorite brand, my favorite car. I didn't know a community even existed when I got into it. So even me being, welcomed by, the DSMers out here locally is just, it's kind of turned into, the more I go into it, the more I realize it's actually more involved, and it's very active, and there's more people, and there's other people out there just like me that, that like Eclipses or that like Evos, and it's grown into something that's I'm very proud, because it's not easy to sustain a community of Mitsubishi owners, but at the same time, I don't know, I personally love it. I'm very grateful for it, and I welcome anyone that wants to get a Mitsubishi to join it, because it's a very welcoming group of people, honestly. And I don't know, the cars are awesome, so can't complain.
Absolutely. Hopefully they'll go back to making something that we all like. Yeah,
everyone always says that, right? Like the return of like a 2025 like Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX, right? Like it'd be sick.
Just something so we can go back to putting the name back on top.
Yeah, it's just I don't think Mitsubishi cares for their motorsport division anymore. Yeah. I think they want to go EV, and I understand. It's just they're too big to really care for the their automotive sector.
The little guy, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Miguel, what events do you plan to attend for the rest of this year and on to next year that people can come out and see your cars in person, or just see you in person?
As far as next year, I would definitely want to attend SEMA and the DSM Shootout. Those are like the two top priority shows or events that I would love to go to. This year, I'm kind of just staying local, going to Mexico here and there, but probably just the local car meets out here in SoCal. If you guys are, in SoCal and interested, a lot of the SoCal Evo pages on Instagram are always posting meets. Usually every other weekend, they go up a canyon cruise or there's something. That's what's cool about California, and the SoCal Evo guys are always hosting stuff, so that's always pretty cool.
Well, that's killer. Are you planning another Mitsubishi Owners Day next year that you know of?
Yeah, definitely. So me and the SoCal Evo guys talked over it, and we're planning on doing it at a bigger location this time. We pretty much filled the Mitsubishi dealership on the last one, so we're definitely trying to make it into a bigger event, and hopefully we could start making it like a yearly thing again since the dealership stopped. Yeah,
I'll try to work that into my plans to come out there. I always love those.
That would be sweet, man. It's always a good turnout.
So Miguel, I'm sure your following's already big enough, but where can people find and follow you on social media?
So people can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok under Miguel DSM. And that's pretty much it.
Okay.
I post all the Mitsubishi progress there, or if I take them out sometime. which is rare, but I still do.
You've got to see these cars. If you're listening, you don't know who Miguel is, you've got to see these cars. They are so clean.
Thank you, man. They're not perfect, but for what they are, I'm very grateful for them. So
they're great examples of the models that they represent, and that's a lot.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
So Miguel, I always give a chance for people at the end to give a thanks or a shout out to anybody who's helped them out along the way. Is there anybody that you want to give a thanks to?
Definitely to all the guys that have ever helped me in any way or form in any of my cars. Honestly, it's a lot of people to really name, but anyone that's ever just spent time out of their day to help me in any way or form to get me to where I'm at today, it's a shout out for them. So you know who you are.
Awesome. Well, Miguel, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and talk to me. I love hearing your backstory. You're doing great things for the community. I hope that you keep doing them forever.
Thank you, man. Hopefully other people also, share the same love and want to do the same. So.
Hell yeah. Well, I hope that I get to see you soon. Maybe we'll try to work something out and, team up on something.
Definitely, man. I'm down for that.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man. Talk to you later.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.